but now I want to turn to the guy who kind of tipped off the pick to me when he screamed from our conference room. When that happened, I pretty much knew it was Tator McMillan because it sounded like you were surprised, Julian, or it was enough of a stunning moment for people to probably do that all across the Carolinas tonight.
Yeah, I know we talked about earlier what we were expecting from this draft, and I thought they were going to go defense, whether it was going to be an edge rusher or a defensive tackle at 8, and obviously Jacksonville really shocked everybody. But I'm surprised by this pick. I did not expect Tator McMillan to be the pick for Carolina here at 8. I had thought, again, edge rusher was probably what they should have been going after. And I also thought they were trying to trade back. And that was pretty clear because we had seen a lot of these picks. They were coming in pretty quickly. And then we had that little pause of, all right, what's Carolina trying to do? Adam Schefter's reporting that they're having phone calls. Then Ashton Jeanty goes off the board. And Albert Breer is talking about how that's going to impact their ability to get out of the 8 pick. So it did feel like at the end that they were stuck. And they decided the guy that they wanted was a big-bodied receiver to help out their quarterback who turned it around in the final 9 weeks of the season. So I don't think you can be, if you're a Panther fan, I don't know if you can be upset about the fact that they want to invest in Bryce Young in what is going to be a critical year 3 for him this fall.
Let me hit you with this piece of business. Colston Loveland just went to the Bears. He goes off the board before Ty Warren.
Okay. So we do get a tight end who goes in the top 10.
Yeah, right. Okay. Okay, so do you feel like this was the situation Dan Morgan indicated could happen?
Yeah.
And maybe he would have liked that word stuck back, but it feels like that's what happened.
Yeah, I wonder if they just didn't like the proposals they were getting because Kelvin Banks Jr. went 9th overall right behind him to New Orleans, and he's going to be probably a long-term franchise left tackle, right tackle, whatever they're going to have him play there in NOLA. So I thought that would be an opportunity for them going into this draft. I talked about it on my show this morning that I looked at 2 entities to be holding the keys for Carolina potentially trading out of the 8th pick. I thought it was the Jacksonville Jaguars at 5 and then Ashton Jeanty. And immediately we saw Jacksonville trade up to number 2 to take Travis Hunter. So they impacted it there. And then at 5, we saw the Browns who moved back there. They did not. They ended up taking Mason Graham, who could have been a player that Carolina could have taken potentially at 8. But then we saw right behind them the Raiders take Jeanty. So both of those are off the board, and that would have impacted Carolina's ability. Because if Jeanty falls all the way back to 8, I then think there's a team that's desperate enough to get up there. I do wonder, like Houston, that's a team that reportedly is looking for tackles. They're drafting 25th overall. I didn't think Dan Morgan wanted to go back any further than maybe 13 or 14. Certainly not 25. So that may have been a team that wanted to get up there. Denver's a team that apparently is making calls. They're sitting at 28th overall. Again, they were below that threshold I thought that Carolina likely didn't want to go to. So I don't think it's not a due diligence in the moment of trying to get out of it. They just kind of were stuck to the point where it didn't make sense for them to where they probably would have been drafting later on in the first round to get out of that pick and not get the caliber of player that they were hoping to get. And I guess that caliber of player is clearly a Tator McMillan.
I loved mock drafts until this very minute. And I feel like every mock draft that I read or watched was just like, Jalen Walker. And like didn't consider other very realistic possibilities that could happen to the Carolina Panthers, one of which, and I'm still a little bit surprised it happened because of the defensive need and because of the need for an earlier second-round pick, that this is what happened. But just take out the draft and everything that goes into that and all those layers. Tator McMillan on the field with Bryce Young next year, what is kind of the expectation 20 minutes after finding out it would happen?
Well, I would think that it's going to be Ted McMillan, Adam Thielen, and Xavier Legette as the 3 that are going to be starting now. That's a big loss for Jalen Coker today as far as looking at this upcoming season. Maybe in 26 he can regain his starting spot. We'll see how it plays out, but you now have a red zone threat, and I thought that JT Sanders was becoming that until he injured his neck in that game against Kansas City in the first half and then was never the same to close out the season. Now you have that, a guy who aced contested catches. And you look at Travis Hunter, who went 2nd overall. Go back, watch the film when Arizona went up against Colorado the last couple of years, and Ted McMillan was able to get his own in that game as well against one of the top corner, in my opinion, in this draft, and probably also the top wide receiver when you look at the combination of talent that Hunter has. So I think McMillan's going to come in, and he's going to be that red zone threat but we'll have to see whether he can separate. That's going to be the big question mark. I had wondered if Carolina would try to get a wide receiver one. I didn't see anyone in free agency who was available. And quite honestly, in this draft, looking at McMillan, who I thought was the best receiver, but then the draft cycle went on, and I think that kind of poisoned the well as far as how fans may have viewed him and viewing him right now at this point in time. Matthew Golden was a name. I thought maybe speed would have made more sense if they're going to go receiver and maybe get a Golden, but they got a guy who they think can maybe be that number one, but they already said Xavier Legette's going to be that. So are they going to have two? Two's better than none, so we'll certainly take that.
We'll see what the competition holds. Yeah. I mean, for Dan Morgan, a linebacker at heart still, to grit his teeth through those 17 games last year, watch that defense, and then go get a second straight first-round receiver. I'm not going to say that was hard for him to do because I think he truly likes the player.
Look at it this way, though, because they invested heavily defensively in March. They went out there, they got Bobby Brown III to be a run stopper. They brought in Turk Gordon to be an interior rush defender. They're going to look at Derek Brown as a free agency addition after not having him for 16 games last year. They brought in Pat Jones. Like, you look at it, they have Jadeveon Clowney coming back as a starting edge. They have DJ Wooning coming back as a starting edge. DJ Johnson, maybe. There's something there. Jarrell Vera really liked him. So they have edge rushers that the staff likes, at least defensive staff. They really like those guys. So it's not necessarily that they had to get an edge rusher. I just look at the group and see no one who's a true difference maker at this point in time in their careers, and that's why I thought it would have made a lot of sense to go out there and do it. But if you look at just how maybe a Jarrell Vera is going to see it, he already has three veterans in Jones, Woonem, and Clowney who he can deploy there. They already have veterans on the defensive line at defensive tackle, so it's not like they needed to have a Mason Graham to come in and play immediately. Linebacker, they're pretty set there. Corner, they have their two guys, and let's not forget, they do like Shamar Bartholomew and a Caleb Evans. Yep. Evans, who started Week 18 game against Atlanta before getting injured. Safety, that's the spot where they need to get another starter, but like they're not taking a safety at 8. Like had they taken Nick Eamon-Ward, that would have been truly surprising. You could have understood it. So if you just look at it, like they already kind of have their starters, and whoever's going to go at 8 probably wasn't going to be a starter right away unless it was a safety. So I can understand this where, Ted McMillan clearly is going to come in and be a starter. Like Jalen Coker, as much as people and fans appreciate him, what he did last year was really good. He was undrafted. He was cut originally by this team. If you can make your team better, which is what they probably believe they're doing right now, why not do that instead of worrying about the undrafted free agent receiver from a year ago from Holy Cross?
What does this tell you, if anything, about how the Panthers feel about Leggett?
I don't think it says they don't like him. No. I think it says they just want to add more to that room, and they're looking towards the future. They have to imagine that this is going to be the last year for Adam Thielen, whether it's in Carolina or in the league period. I probably think he's going to retire after this season. David Moore, who's their fourth receiver, he's probably not going to be back next year if I had to guess. So you needed to add another piece, and were you really going to completely depend upon your first-round pick from a year ago? And again, while having a really nice rookie season, I think a guy who can be a piece of the future in Jalen Coker, a former undrafted free agent at that spot. So it does make sense just looking ahead. And I was wondering, coming into this, what would be the surprise pick? Because last year, I don't think we expected a running back to go off the board in the second round for Carolina and Jonathan Brooks. I don't think we expected them to take Trevin Wallace, a linebacker. And here we are yet again where Dan Morgan and Dave Canales are surprising all of us by taking a position that you would not have seen as like a priority position of need. Maybe tomorrow night would have been totally fine if they would have gotten a speedy kind of slot receiver. I would have understood that. I can understand this because you're investing in your quarterback, and Dan Morgan did say at the Combine back in February, while defense is a priority, they're not going to neglect the offense. And, well, this is exactly doing that. You're not neglecting the offense. You're investing in your quarterback, and that's a good thing. We'll just see whether it works out. They made the right pick.
All right, so moving forward, the Panthers are talking at the podium right now, so that's a sign they are done for the evening. So you're
I see Dan.
You're off the hook with that. We'll hear from them shortly. So now we turn to day 2 for the Carolina Panthers. Now, they didn't trade back tonight and get a pick earlier than 57, but that doesn't mean they can't do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I would love to see if they can move up earlier on the draft board there tomorrow night. And, I mean, edge would be what I'm looking at. This has been considered a deep edge class. And if that that is the case, then there probably shouldn't be a ton of consternation over them not taking an edge rusher tonight. And looking at it, I mean, Michael Williams just goes off the board. I think other than Abdul Carter, he's the second one to go off so far. Jalen Walker still sitting there. So Walker's not going to be available night 2. But there could be guys that they do like there on the second night. So I think that they should try to take. I also think safety, that makes a lot of sense, as well as, again, right now it's Trevon Merrick. It's potentially Demani Richardson. They need to add another true caliber starting safety in there. So I would think those would be the 2 spots, certainly, that they're really looking for. And other than, like, maybe they could do tight end, but I would think right now, edge rusher, I feel like they need to add there, and safety, that is probably the glaring need at this point in time, just looking at things as they stand right now.
All right, Julian Council from Locked On Panthers. Man, I appreciate you sticking around tonight. What a night it has been. And you've already appeared on the Locked On NFL scouting show, or live
I will
show?
be going on soon.
You will be on soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will release you and let you get to that.
And
so,
I'll be live on YouTube tonight on the Locked On Panthers YouTube channel.
Plenty of reaction, and I assume tomorrow as well.
And tomorrow night.
Okay.
I'm going to be up for a wedding, but I'm going to stay sober. It's a welcome party, so I won't have too many drinks. We'll be live again tomorrow night, too.
Locked On Panthers, Julian Council, thanks for joining us.